Hi there, my name is Jane Moy, and I'm a data coaching and performance manager on the Built for Zero team. My job is to walk alongside Built for Zero communities and help them be able to get and pull good quality, usable data out of their systems so that when they're trying to end homelessness, they're able to measure the impact and be able to track people in real time. Today, I've been asked to come in and give a little bit more information about what Built for Zero is, how our approach works, and the most of our time we'll spend is talking about data because that's at the heart of what we do. Why is it important and how does it affect every single person and what we're asking of you guys as stakeholders in the community? And the last thing we'll do is touch a little bit on the movement itself. So what is the intersection of Northwestern Louisiana and the Built for Zero movement? Your community has chosen to focus on reducing and ending chronic homelessness. So you might ask, okay, what exactly is the Built for Zero approach? I'd like to start out by talking about three core beliefs. We believe that if you commit to a clear end state, if a community is able to shift to by name real-time data, they'll be able to drive measurable reductions in their community. So what does this mean? This first one of committing to a clear end state is really being able to rally around a shared aim. In this case, functional zero for chronic homelessness. And that's defined as the number of actively homeless chronic individuals that's less than or equal to 0.1% of all homeless individuals or 3 people, whichever is greater. Having that clear end state and goal also means that as you work backwards and look at how your system works together, it's easier to understand if there's alignment across the entire system. So the question in mind here is to ask, do all of our actions across the system collectively help our community get closer to our goal of ending chronic homelessness? The second piece here is being able to shift to by name real-time data. And this is so important because we know that aggregate numbers are not enough. Everybody has unique needs that can change. And if we're able to build a list that knows each person that is experiencing homelessness in real time, it can help communities track individuals or households' journeys through the system. Imagine not having to spend time trying to find somebody because you have a referral for them. You can call them up and you know exactly where they are because the list that you have in your community is up to date. Lastly, it's also a tool, right? Having a by name list is a tool. It allows your system to be able to collect and track information and aggregate it so you can understand if there's inequities in your system. So we'll talk a little bit more next about driving measurable reductions. This last one is really important because in order to end homelessness, obviously communities need to see reductions in the numbers of actively homeless. And to make progress towards that you can actually measure, it requires data and it requires a credible number of where you're starting from. So you have to be able to establish a clear, credible baseline. And to actually drive reductions, we use the practice of doing plan, do, study, act cycles that are taken from improvement science or quality improvement. Next, we'll actually talk about what the importance of data is, not just on the whole, but for each person being able to contribute to it. So the importance of data really comes down to that second core belief of shifting to by name real-time data and that first one of having a shared measurable aim. So we know that the idea of ending homelessness is a very complex one because homeless response systems have a lot of complexity to them. Even within the same homeless response system, it can be difficult to be able to track someone down and refer them to another provider in any given moment. And we know that there's also overlaps with adjacent systems like criminal justice, juvenile justice, the school district, foster care, and systems within systems that happen, right? So the domestic violence system, for example. So it's helpful to understand, like, where is our starting state? So for people coming through our system, can we collectively track where someone is showing up in our homeless response system or when they're leaving? And what are the touch points on their journey through our system, right? What providers or agencies are they connecting with during their journey? Are they potentially getting hooked up with our coordinated entry system? Are they not? Are they also potentially getting connected with public housing or other systems within our system, right? It's not always clear what this looks like, and being able to untangle this really gives us a lot of insight into our system as a whole. It also helps us understand that we're not just tracking outputs, right? This might be very familiar for people to at the program level to produce results, right? We might need to say, what is the number of total rental subsidies you've provided, or the number of bed night stays, or meals provided. And that's all important in understanding our system capacity, but we also want to be able to measure outcomes. So are we able to track somebody as they enter and leave our system in real time? And this is where the starting point comes in handy, right? It is a challenge of a different sort to be able to count down to zero. It gives you a clear end state, but it also gives you an ability to track your progress over time. And so this next piece is just talking a little bit about how does this actually work, and starting to bring it down to every day, right? If we talk about every day, what does this really look like for us? And this is about measuring our progress through our collective data. So I'm going to show you a journey map of a client that had, I think it was like 42 different touch points in the system or processes that had to happen from when the client was identified in the system to when they were housed. And so I want you guys to imagine if each of these points, these colored dots, is a touch point or step in the system or in the journey of the client. Imagine if the yellow dots are data that is captured in HMIS or on your by name list. Imagine if the pink dots is data that are collected at the agency level that isn't necessarily shared because you guys are entering it into a secondary database that's not HMIS, for example. And then let's take a look at those light blue dots and just imagine, what if there was no data currently collected? Do you think it would be easy to understand and track a client's journey in this way, right? So some provocations would be, how would we know where a client is at in our system? Another provocation could be, how do we know if certain parts of our system could be tweaked or improved? It'd be a little bit hard to be able to see what is going on underneath, right? Because we just don't have that information at our fingertips. So you might ask, like, how do we actually get from point A to point B? And that's where I'm going back to that by name data set that's so important, right? Oops. So being able to track information about people in real time, that it has full coverage, right? It's not just saying, oh, we're only going to track people that are coming through emergency shelter, or we're only going to track people that are in hotels that have hotel vouchers. We want to be able to know the full extent of chronic homelessness in your community. We also want to know at the person level, what does it look like for them? Like, what are things that are important for their housing needs to track? Maybe it's their history, their health, unique needs. Are we tracking it in a way that's reliable over time? And the last thing is, are we regularly updating it? Or is it just data that's collected when they join a program, but we don't update it after that? So part of this is really understanding who else do you need at the table? Because everyone's data, if we go back to kind of looking at this, everyone's data is important into understanding a client's journey and being able to measure different points of the system. So just talking about driving measurable reductions a little bit more. There's 7 key data points that we ask communities to track at the aggregate level. And they're your actively homeless number, so who at a single point in time each month, at the same time each month, how many people are chronic and experiencing homelessness. And then each month we want to know how many people are coming into your system and how many people are leaving your system. So that's where the inflow and outflow comes in. And to be able to understand, oops, change the slide. So this goes back to that actively homelessness number and then the inflow and outflow as well. And the idea here is that if you know what your numbers are for inflow and outflow, you have a better sense of your system's capacity to house and exit people successfully, but you also understand if there's any gaps in terms of the meeting the needs collectively of everybody coming through your system. So you're able to say like, okay, like our system is not able to meet the needs of everybody coming through a system. Here's where the gaps are and being able to clearly outline what those are. And that can open up opportunities to go after funding, to align programs and services, maybe braid programs and services together to meet the needs of people coming through your system. So being able to shift from program to system, like that level of thinking, has really helped a lot of communities see reductions in their overall numbers. Because it gave them a baseline to start from, but it also allowed them to really like work together in order to have that shared goal, right? Like, how are we collectively working together to drive reductions? And like, just to touch back on those plan, do, study, act processes. And just revisiting, what is Northwest Louisiana's story, data story? Where are you guys starting from? So there are a few numbers reported in to look at some of your aggregate, right? So we have various numbers reported in, but the question is, if these are coming from HMIS and they're coming from open program enrollments, for example, does that include everybody that's serving people that are experiencing homelessness? Or are there some people that are not entering data? And if not, how do we get to the point where we can confidently say, here's our baseline of our system? So I'm just looking at the chronic numbers as well for inflow and outflow, right? So just looking at this quick dashboard, it helps understand like where when we pull information from the system, this is what it looks like right now. It looks like that 46% of our outflow was to housing placements, and a little over 7% was to people moving to an active, and 46.2% was for people that no longer meet the population criteria of chronic homelessness. So immediately, what are some questions that come to mind, right? Like, do you feel this is credible information? If it's coming from HMIS and do you feel like it's complete or not? If it's not, then what would it take to make the data complete? And here I'm going to reference back to that client journey that was mapped out before, right? Like if let's imagine that all the blues and pinks were actually yellows, that every single point along this client journey was captured somehow in HMIS. How would that help you guys in terms of understanding where are the levers in your system that you can pull in order to tweak and drive improvements in your system? So just want to pause there, and next we can talk a little bit about Built for Zero and the movement. So one of the awesome things about joining Built for Zero is that your community is actually part of a peer network, right? It's part of a movement. You are not the only community that is going through Built for Zero. Actually, there are 107 communities that are participating with Built for Zero. And of those, 14 communities have functionally ended homelessness for a population. So I just wanted to put this out there because homelessness is solvable. We've had communities actually drive reductions to ending homelessness in subpopulations. So this is a really important milestone to like celebrate, and just know like you guys are not alone. We're able to leverage, because we're part of the movement, we're able to leverage the learnings that other communities have experienced over time. And I just wanted to include some testimonials in here. A lot of what they're talking about is the data, collaboration, being able to change the system and the way people work together. So I think I will just leave you with that. You guys are all part of the process and part of the movement. It could not happen without you. So I am just so excited for you guys to embark on this journey together, and to learn alongside you and support you all. Thank you so much.